Okay. After such wonderful poems, we really definitely need to make him a citizen of Austin. Jesus Pantel from the city of Austin is going to now say some words.
Hello everyone, my name is Jesus Pantel. I'm with the Cultural Arts Division with the Austin City Government, and they asked that I guess redo the certificate just because some of y'all have came in a little bit late. So the Mayor and City Council of Austin have had a certificate making Keki Daruwalla an honorary citizen of Austin, so I would like to re-present this to him and just thank him for the wonderful poetry that he's doing and give this to him again. Thank you very much.
We're now going to move on. Okay, this one might remind you of Byron.
The flare in Gothic Mansion.
He definitely deals the verse card.
And there's even Karachi Rod.
Soraya and Boo are such are his companions.
Who's my cat? And now you know. They know. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. I'm the crazy cat lady poet from Houston. That's who I am. So, thank you. That was great. Thanks everyone for being here. And I was just telling Menaz this morning, we were driving over. You know, we are so grateful to Usha because she has created a community, a new community where one didn't exist before. You know, so we really appreciate all the work you did for that. You know? And thanks to all the brilliant poets I've met. Some of them I've met for the first time. From far and wide, they made the effort to come, so that's just really wonderful. And again, we have a new community, and this is really wonderful. So, and I've also learned that more people are scared of me than I realized was the case over the last couple of days, because I'm a literary critic in addition to being a poetry and fiction writer. So I've strayed from the straight path. So anyway, is this okay? Is the mic okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. I was asked by this Nigerian-American poet, Abayomi Animoshan, I hope I'm saying the name right, and he just asked a question of a number of poets like Fadi Juda and Zubair Ahmed and a lot of accomplished and emerging poets. The question, how do you see yourself as an immigrant poet? And of course, being who I am, I thought, I'm not an immigrant poet. And that's how I'm going to take on the question. And I'm kind of serious about that because until you asked me the question, I had never thought of myself ever as an immigrant writer or poet. I really hadn't. And so I wrote this essay called Why I Am Not an Immigrant Poet. And I have got copies of it here, so if you're interested, you can pick it up. And again, to make it more complicated for myself, because that's who I am, I could have just sort of given you the highlights of the essay and my main points. But I'm going to try to, I stand by the essay, but I'm going to qualify it and sort of, modify it a little bit. The point of the essay is, I have a deep problem with multiculturalism, and when I say that, people think, he's just Rush Limbaugh, this is a right-wing, position, but I've always critiqued multiculturalism from the very left perspective, extreme left. You can call me an anarchist, like way out left. So that's my angle on multiculturalism, and it's problematic to me because it seems to me that the bargain that's been made in this country is, especially the last 15, 20 years, since the end of the Cold War, is we give you this multiculturalism, and you, immigrants, people of color, minorities of any kind, shut up about economic justice, shut up about economic issues, and you can keep your culture and make a fetish of it or whatever, that's okay. Just don't go there. So I have a problem with that bargain, and I think Multiculturalism doesn't have to be that way. You can have pride in your culture and identity. That's fine, but not if it comes at this cost. So to the extent that immigrant writing and immigrant poetry fits into that larger scheme of thinking, I have a problem with that. And I think multiculturalism as it's practiced now, or multicultural writing or poetry, fits really well into neoliberal capitalism, with neoliberal thinking in general, and what I would call neoliberal literary industry. And I was reading Pramila's essay last night on some immigrant poets, South Asian poets, and I think she's picking up on this very well. Along the same lines, she's talking about the immigrant poet self-exoticizing. If you define yourself as the other, I think that's kind of a trap that neoliberal capitalism is really. I hope when I say neoliberal capitalism, people aren't scared. Sometimes, when I go to newspapers and magazines, like, just don't say neoliberal, just don't say that, or neo-fascist, whatever. Don't use that terminology. So anyway, when you define yourself as the other, to me, that's a problem. Also, when I wrote this essay, I had an issue with diaspora, that term. And the origin of the term is, of course, the Jewish diaspora. Actually, it goes back even before that to the Greeks. But the modern usage is from the Jewish diaspora. And the sense of exile and forced departure and constantly yearning for the homeland and hoping that one day you'll go back to the homeland, those, and romanticizing and sentimentalizing the homeland, those are key elements of the definition of diaspora. Now diaspora has become completely diluted, like everything and everyone is diaspora. So I think we should be clear about that I want to make a distinction between immigration, migrants, often privileged migrants, versus exile, or diaspora. Those are different things. And I want to say that so I had a problem with what I would consider false nostalgia, false sentimentality. That's what I argued against in this essay. But then I started thinking, well, if you are nostalgic, if you are engaging in sentimentality or romanticization, what's so wrong with that? So that's just another sort of thought that occurred to me. I took a stand in this essay that you cannot be in between always. You have to take a stand in history. You are located in a specific time and place. And I said in this essay, you are by definition a citizen of a place. So I was arguing in this essay, well, I believe in this necessity, I believe in this pragmatism, and to the extent that multicultural poetry or immigrant poetry is an escape from that, I have an issue with that. But again, I would say, well, if you are ahistorical, and if you want to be outside history and outside context and place, what's so wrong about that? Immigrant versus exile, I mentioned that, is it against the will? So the question then comes in, who do we write for? And I think a lot of my conceptual, my ideas, often they come back to the question of audience. Who is the audience? Who are we writing for? And that's a very important part here too when we think about immigrant poetry, diaspora, exile, forced departure, yearning for the homeland, nostalgia, sentimentality, all of that. Who are we writing for? And I don't claim that I have an answer or for any of these things. I'm just, throwing some of the stuff out there. Also the question, Usha was asking me at a reading a couple of years ago about how much I know about Urdu poetry or my tradition, and I said I really don't know, except when Salim Piradina starts singing, and then it just, my primitive, this just kicks in, and I'm like, yeah, I know this stuff, So he triggers that. But the question is, can you have multiple worldviews in your head, the East, the West, at the same time? And how does that question, this question of immigrant poet? The lack of division, I talked about the lack of division within myself in this essay. That's just not true at all, so I take that back. I said that I feel alienated from Urdu poetry in general or South Asian poetry. I think that's still true. I don't feel that about Chinese poetry. It could be that through modernism, through Ezra Pound and so on, we assimilated Chinese poetry in an imagistic, modernist way, so maybe I don't feel alienated from that. So that's a thought that occurred to me. Immigrant poetry as a subset of confessionalism. And I have very serious problems with, as Keki was saying, with confessionalism as therapy. So to the extent that becomes sort of a perpetual ghetto of the mind in a way, like your cultural identity, this confessional, perpetual sorrow and so on. I have a problem with immigrant poetry in that sense as well. Immigrant as nostalgia generating machine. What I do like is immigrant poetry as voice of justice, which I think was more true of the Jewish literature, Jewish poets, Jewish diaspora, and other diasporas. That I'm very comfortable with. Degree of illicitness. Illicitness, I had a talk with, I talked to Changre Lee, the fiction writer, once about this, and I think now I'm sort of getting to the positive side of, immigrant writing, immigrant poetry, what I like. So the sense of being an imposter, sense of being illegal, even if you are legal, I really like that. I think there's something really useful to that. To the extent that the immigrant poet has unrealistically high expectations, utopian expectations of American culture, I am very comfortable with that. I think the immigrant poetry, to the extent that it introduces irrationality, inconsistency into this American narrative, this myth, that's wonderful. I like that. I'm just going to end in a second. True autonomy of art from politics. I think the immigrant poet can contribute to that by questioning the placement of art in politics, of which multiculturalism is the most overt expression today. So if you don't fit in that niche, I think that's great, because then you've created something new as an immigrant poet. Immigration is about brokenness. And immigrant poets, I don't think, should try to heal the brokenness within themselves, including shame, guilt, and unjustified pride. I think that you write great poetry if you allow these to persist and try not to heal the divisions and make yourself whole. I know that sounds contradictory and perhaps irrational, but that's my take on it. And that may be a way of escaping the self-definition that they want to impose on us as this separate thing, that once you define yourself that way, then the effort to understand us or this real communication no longer needs to take place, because we are taking this niche and just running away with that. But if you introduce this irrationality and inconsistency and this radical kind of questioning, which I think immigrants are ideally positioned to do, then that's great. That's a great contribution. So I'll just end with that. Thank you.
Poet Laureate of Suffolk County. Poet Laureate of Suffolk County, Pramila. A core group member of Matwala.
Watch this poetry glow.
Tirtha, Trace, and 13 Days to Let Go.
And she's also the booklet wala.
Hello everybody, this is wonderful to be here, and I'm the timekeeper, so I feel like I'm God. I'm God, the timekeeper. So if I go beyond my 15 minutes, don't kill me. What?
I said I'll take the lead from God.
Okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, please do. That's our only way to end this today.
Mandated blackout, Indo-Pak War, 1965. Batti ban karo, lights off. A call from the Gurkha police on patrol cuts the night, traveling up 3 balconies to the thin flame mother has lit to check on the baby. How can Jet see this pinprick light? She mutters, snuffing it out. Father tut-tuts. I open my eyes, smell lamp smoke, powder, and diapers. No shadows. My parents are 2 blobs, my brother, smaller blobs, snuggling close to mother. The barred windows are silvered by a moonless dark. I'm afraid to look out. I know Science Circle below, a black well, 2 roads branching from it, spreading a nightmare. Trees within its fence, changing into giants. I make faces at my brothers, open my mouth into a big O, grimace like a pishachi witch, make horns, stick my tongue out. No adult threats of stop it, want a beating? I pull apart my oiled braids so my hair spikes like porcupine quills, stick my pinky up my nose and eat a booger, and still no shout from mother. No yanking of my elbow to the sink, her rings cutting my palms as she plunges them under a tap. We sleep in dark, curled on the floor, and wake up to a brilliant day, as if the war were elsewhere. Thank you. Hiding from the eclipse. My mother hung thick curtains on the windows of her bedroom when she was pregnant, for fear that the moon, eating the sun, would eat a part of her fetus. I cuddled with her in the dark all day, the door bolted, so not a spark of light crept in. She described the gradual darkness creeping across the world as the moon sailed slowly across the center of the sun, eclipsing it, only a halo hinting that golden barrel of light. Can I see the eclipse, Amma? I asked. She said, you can wear glasses and see it, but I need to be here in the room to protect my baby, for the moon might harm her. Does the moon think baby is the sun? She might, said mother, and I imagined the moon sailing into our street and into mother's ball of a belly and sailing out again, bloated, and I was glad we were hiding from the moon's voracious appetite.